Oui, je me rallie aussi à la loi 21 sur la laïcité. Je me rallie à la loi 96 sur la langue. Je me rallie à la loi 32 sur la liberté académique. Je me rallie à toutes ces actions pour lutter contre les féminicides et les violences faites aux femmes. Je me rallie aux maternelles 4 ans. Je me rallie aux maisons des aînés. Bref, je me rallie à plein d'avancées positives pour le Québec.
Bernard Drainville today in his acceptance speech as a candidate for the CAQ in the upcoming election. Tom Mulcair is standing by. So, Tom, there he's talking about all the things he does agree that the CAQ has done or with policies they have. But, of course, just a couple of years ago, Greg Kelly sent me a text or a tweet, I guess, that Bernard Drainville had sent out to Francois Legault. So this is back, I guess, in 2019, saying, how can you sleep? I hope you sleep at night knowing that, you've done whatever you had to do to become PM. So what do you think? I mean, some people are saying this is simply a matter of him being an opportunist. Is he?
I don't think it could be too much clearer than that this is purely opportunism. Look, I just went through my French panel show on the French on TVA, and I have to tell you that the host is a wonderful guy named Paul Larocque. We had Drainville in for an interview, so we had been doing a setup for it with the other panelists who are Emmanuel Latraverse and Mathieu Bock-Côté, and then our friend Drainville comes on, and Paul Larocque asked him no fewer than 3 times, yes, but are you a sovereignist? And to quote Mathieu Bock-Côté, which I don't often do, he put on a figure skating demonstration, wouldn't answer the question. And that's all you need to know. I think, honestly, François Legault believes that he can pull the wool over Quebecers' eyes and get away with doing 2 completely opposite things at the same time. Seducing his PQ sovereignist electorate by bringing in 2 high-profile, unrepentant separatists in Caroline Saint-Hilaire and Bernard Drainville, and at the same time believing somehow, magically, he's going to hold on to the Federalists who voted for him in the last campaign. I'm not too sure that he's going to be able to pull that off.
Can I ask a question? Maybe this is completely out of left field, but I brought this up before. How surprised would you be if Jean-François Lisée was the next to go over?
Well, we teased him about that yesterday morning because I do a radio show on the French side with him every day and with Richard Martineau. And I have to tell you, I told him the only riding that Legault would offer him for the CAQ would be Westmount.
Okay, well, that answers that question then, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he is somebody who will never hold on that principle.
Okay.
So is Drainville an asset or a liability here?
Well, for Legault's immediate purpose, which is shoring up his Parti Québécois base, he's an asset. But at the same time, Legault seems to be forgetting about the first word in his party's name, which is coalition. So he brought together people who were from different political backgrounds, different political stripes. And there were a lot of Anglos and Allos, a little bit tired of everything else that had happened for a while, who looked at this guy Legault, renouncing separatism. A lot of Federalists saying, the guy says he's not a separatist anymore. I believe him. Now, imagine that François Legault owns a store called The CAQ, and it has a big, magnificent picture window at the front. And he's just decided that in that picture window, he's going to put Caroline Saint-Hilaire and the guy who wrote the Charter of Values, the infamous xenophobic Charter of Values for Pauline Marois, that led to the discriminatory Bill 21. So they put him in the window as well, and they say, come on in, buy some of the stuff that we have in this lovely CAQ store. All the people who are already in that store, people of different backgrounds, many Federalists are saying, Mr. Legault, that wasn't in the window when we entered your store. We didn't know that that was part of what you were up to. See you later. We're going to go shop somewhere else. I think that Dominique Anglade is probably going to be very happy with today's announcement, as will probably be Éric Duhem, the leader of the Quebec Conservatives, because he's going to be able to shore up some of his support in the Quebec City area with this. People tend to forget that even in the 1980 referendum, Quebec City voted heavily no. So people tend to think, oh, it's because it's all French that it must be heavily. No. Very Federalist, people who know the game, and they're not easily swayed. So I think that Legault is making one of his very rare strategic mistakes.
Okay. Are we done, Tom, or are we going to see more of this as far as you're concerned coming up? There's still candidates to pick, to choose, to run. What's going to happen?
Well, what was interesting in the recital that we got out of Drainville on the air today was what he was saying was Legault had actively courted him. His chief of staff reached out to him. There are reports, he's sort of denying-ish, that he had actually been courted as of April, because that's a huge problem for him ethically. Because if he had been courted months ago by Legault and was still on the air doing political commentary, you can imagine how that affects and really stains his credibility and his neutrality. So he's trying to say, well, there were some discussions, but not really. And it was only in the last few days that we actually had real live discussions about the total possibilities. And then I met with Legault, who, reached out to me, and I was so flattered I had to accept the offer because things have changed. And so I listened to the interviews that both of them gave. It was Caroline Saint-Hilaire's turn yesterday, and they're all doing the back crawl. They're all talking with their hands. They're trying to explain why everything's different, that, they've never really believed in sovereignty, or if they did, well, then it was a different context. It's all malarkey. They're dyed in the wool. As Mathieu Bocoté said about Drainville, he said, this guy is 100% dyed in the wool sovereignist, will never change his opinion about this. And yet he's going to try to convince voters, because of Legault, that he's actually changed his stripes a little bit. I think that anybody who follows this stuff is going to tell you the same thing that Mathieu Bocoté did, which is Bernard Drainville is a rock-solid, irreducible, dyed-in-the-wool separatist and will never change that opinion. And he is, out of personal interest and political opportunism, going here. He was trying to say that it couldn't possibly be opportunism because he had just signed a big contract with a fat salary on it to continue with his radio show, as if that had anything to do with his motivation for going back into politics, with the certainty that if the CAQ does foreign government, of course, he gets a limo and he gets all the attributes that come with being a Quebec minister.
Tom, let's move on. I want to get your take on this story. So students at unsubsidized private colleges in Quebec soon won't be eligible to obtain a work permit after completing their studies. So this was kind of part of the deal. You pay a huge tuition fee, as much as $25,000 a year, and you're eligible for a work permit. Well, what do you make of this?
This is the type of mean-spirited stuff that comes completely out of left field, no consultation, no real valid explanation. It's just the type of mean-spirited thing that we've seen from the CAQ since the beginning. Remember when Simon-Jolin Barrette, before he went on to become language minister, he was in charge of immigration. He said he was just going to take tens of thousands of valid immigration applications, for which people had already paid, by the way, and throw them in the garbage, which he did. And then he got upbraided by a judge who said, you can't do that. That's completely illegal. And he was forced to reconsider all of those cases under the law. This is the CAQ's approach. Is this supposed to get a rise out of people? Is it supposed to, again, shore up their sovereignists and their proto-nationalist base? Yeah, I think that that's what all of this is about. This one really caught me by surprise, because I don't think that there was anything involved in those students that was taking anything away from Quebec, other than perhaps providing workers at a time when we really need some.
Yeah, exactly. That was my thought too.
Can I just go? I know you talked about it this morning. I had not heard anything about it until you brought it up. So René Lévesque, we mentioned his birthday. We talked about the Graham Fraser piece comparing François Legault more to Maurice Duplessis than, of course, to René Lévesque. Well, his sister has not taken very kindly with Lucien Bouchard at this anniversary, and I guess the unveiling of that statue of Jacques Parizeau in Quebec City, about what he's had to say about René Lévesque. So what's this all about?
Well, it's interesting because to mark René Lévesque's 100th anniversary of his birth, there were a bunch of celebrations and memorials taking place, some academic, some more political and partisan, some having to do with events in Quebec City. It's all, very high road stuff. And Lucien Bouchard was the person tapped to be in charge of these things. And Bouchard made a strong profession of faith last week, said he's still absolutely a sovereignist and hasn't moved away from that. But out of nowhere, he gave a little bit more than what the client had ordered, because he starts going on at length about what a gong show the Parti Québécois was, and it was so awful because, he'd had a bit of a rough time with them. He just went on. And he was more talking about himself than Lévesque and Lévesque's legacy. And Lévesque has a sister who's in her mid-90s. Her name is Alice Lévesque. And as she says at the beginning of her extraordinarily clear and lucid letter, she's still got all of her marbles. And she goes, look, first of all, it was absolutely ungracious of Lucien Bouchard to go on and on against the party that René Lévesque founded. This guy was invited to preside. Let's show a little bit of class, please. And then the rest of it was like, by the way, what were you doing talking about yourself? We're supposed to be talking about René Lévesque. So I do think that it was an incredible slip on the part of Lucien Bouchard. You can agree with him or not agree with him, agree with his politics or not agree with his politics, but I think it was a major slip by Lucien Bouchard. And I think that, quite simply, if he hasn't already done so, he should apologize to René Lévesque's family for what he did.
Yeah, they're not really good at apologizing, right?
He's better than
Just
some.
saying, Tom, to be fair. Listen, I want to ask you one last thing, which is kind of around what we talked about. I'm just curious. We've been talking so much about the CAQ and the separatists they've now, managed to get. What would the Liberals, in your estimation, have to do in terms of getting a, quote unquote, high-profile candidate to counter some of this? Who would that be?
Good question.
Well, I admired what Dominique Anglade. I had already gotten a hint over the weekend that they were going to announce a high-profile candidate for NDG, and I was sort of rolling my eyes saying, yeah, sure, I'm waiting to see that. And believe it, you better believe it, that, Desiree McGrath was an incredible catch for the Liberals. I mean, she's got great credibility with regard to the environment. She was one of the people trained by Al Gore's movement with regard to climate change and sustainable development issues, fluently bilingual.
Yeah, Tom, I'm going to stop you because that's a high-profile get for you. Because yes, and we really liked her. We talked to her yesterday, but I'm talking about sort of star power. Someone with a name like a Bernard Drainville, but on the other side, is there someone that comes to mind right off the top?
Aaron Rand.
No,
Natasha
seriously.
Hall. I couldn't
Tom
be more
Mulcair.
serious. I couldn't be more serious. I don't know who they're working on, but I do think that it augurs well when they can get somebody of Desiree McGraw's caliber, frankly. There are a couple of other really, really good ridings that have come up. The person who's running for the Liberals in Mount Royal riding, frankly, has Madame Setlakwe, has a very good CV, lots of deep experience, and very admirable person. So they're recruiting at a decent level for a party that's not expected to do great in the next election. But I also think that this unexpected gift from Legault should be translated into votes and maybe even recruitment at a higher level. Lots of people want to go into politics, but you've just got to be out there beating the bushes all the time to find them.
I'm going to throw out one name. Tell me what you think real quick. Joe Ortona.
I think that Ortona is great. I remember when Denis Coderre turned him down because he had said something Coderre didn't like with regard to defending the English-speaking community. I remember that day saying Coderre is going to lose the election for the mayor of Montreal. And I noticed that Joe Ortona is still there defending the institution that he represents, the English Montreal School Board. So there you go. Okay. I think Ortona would be a great catch.
Tom Mulcair back tomorrow morning with Andrew Carter at about 7:40. Thank you, Tom.
Take good care.